Join us as we dive into our obsession with true crime, history, and mysterious stories. Each Corrupted Clip episode is less than 30 minutes long, providing you with the perfect bite-sized content to get you through the day.
We assume no responsibility or liability for any errors or omissions in the content of this episode. The corruptpod is based on the facts and our opinions of the case. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to the Corrupt Podcast. Phineas Gage is known as the man who created neuroscience because he's one of the most well-known early cases of surviving traumatic brain damage. During a workplace accident, a tamping rod went through Phineas's skull. He would survive, but was reported to have a completely different personality after the accident. This led to multiple studies on how the human brain, specifically the frontal lobe, works in connection with our personalities.
Head over to patreon.com/corruptpodcast to join our Patreon. Early access to episodes, stickers, a member shout out, behind the scenes, and exclusive content are waiting for you.
We will also be having a special Halloween episode coming down the pike. This will drop on Halloween Day. So when you're ready to get away from fake horror to real horror, we've got you. Paige and I will be dressed up to celebrate scarecrows, pumpkins, leaves, ghosts, and scary stories.
This episode focuses on how the human brain operates. So let's talk about brains. At the most basic level, the brain is an organ that controls thought, memory, sensory inputs like sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell, your emotions, movement, and automatic behaviors like keeping the rest of your body going.
The human adult brain weighs about 3 pounds and is fully developed by our mid-20s. The brain consists of white matter and gray matter. The gray matter is the darker outer portion, and the white matter is the lighter center portion. In a CT scan of the brain, the outer part by the skull is the gray matter and the center dense part is the white matter. According to the Cleveland Clinic,
you can compare gray matter to a computer. White matter is the cables for the computer.
There are 3 parts of the brain, but our story today focuses on the cerebrum. This is the front and largest portion of the brain. We know today, because of cases like Phineas, that the cerebrum controls our personality, problem solving, and reasoning skills.
The cerebral cortex has 4 lobes, each one with a different job. Just behind the forehead is the frontal lobe, which is also the largest. The frontal lobe controls our personality, like empathy and creativity. It also helps us understand social cues, speech, and recognition of smell. With a quick summary, the white matter is like cords for the computer system that is our brain. The cerebrum and frontal lobe specifically make our personalities unique and allow us to pick up on social cues and make good decisions in the short term and the long term. Not much is known about the early life of Phineas. He was born in July 1823 and was one of 4 children. He grew up in a farming family in New Hampshire. In September 1848, Phineas was 25 years old and working for the Rutland and Burlington Railroad Company. He had been promoted to a foreman working in Cavendish, Vermont.
On September 13, 1848, Phineas was going about his typical workday. His duties included clearing rocks to level the ground for the new railway. This job required Phineas to drill a hole into the ground and place an explosive inside. Then gunpowder and a fuse were also placed in the hole. Sand then covered the hole to prevent contact with the explosives, and a tamping rod pushed the explosives into the rock.
That afternoon, Phineas packed a hole with explosives, but forgot to cover the hole with sand before hitting it with the tamping rod. His head was turned, looking away from the hole, as the tamping rod hit the side of the rock, and it ignited the gunpowder. The tamping rod, which measured 1.25 inches in diameter, 3.58 feet in length, and weighed 13 pounds, shot through his head. The tamping iron would be similar to a fence post or a crowbar in size. Entering just below his left cheek, it exited at the top of his skull and landed 82 feet away from him. The impact threw Phineas backwards and onto his back. After the dust cleared, the railway crew found Phineas on his back, but awake and coherent.
Miraculously, Phineas survived the accident. He was conscious, speaking, and even walking to the cart so he could be rushed to the doctor. At 6 p.m., the town doctor, John Martin Harlow, inspected Phineas, but he did not initially believe the events as they were presented. Dr. Harlow thought it must have been impossible for the metal rod to enter through Phineas's cheek and out the top of his skull, and Phineas to survive, but also be up walking and talking. Dr. Harlow went to the accident scene himself to confirm the accuracy of the story, and after seeing the bone and brain matter left at the accident scene, he no longer doubted the events.
That evening, Phineas's memory was tested. He was able to name off coworkers and told the doctor not to worry his friends because he would be back to work in a day or two anyways. Dr. Harlow set to work attempting to save the life of Phineas Gage. Phineas had his head shaved, skull and brain fragments removed, and the wound debrided as best as a small-town doctor in the 1800s could. Keep in mind that antibiotics didn't exist, and hand-washing before a medical procedure wasn't even standard practice at this time. Dr. Harlow also attempted to clean and replace any bones back into Phineas's skull, kind of like a puzzle. He's trying to piece these things back together from what he found at the accident scene and what was still in Phineas's brain at that point.
Ugh.
Phineas vomited every 20 minutes, but remained alert throughout the procedure. He had burns on his hands and arms, which Dr. Harlow treated as well. Phineas never seemed to feel pain from the wounds during this procedure.
This sort of explains the process of how your body can react to trauma without you feeling any pain or with feeling pain. At this point, Phineas's body was like, yep, something definitely happened up north. Cue the throw up. Like it's the body reacting to it.
Up north?
Yeah.
Something's not right up north there. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that or just like adrenaline. Like maybe he's just like running on adrenaline.
Yeah. Was the tampering rod completely removed from the skull? Do we know this? Or was some of it still in?
It literally shot through his cheek, out the top of his skull, and then 82 foot behind him. Like the whole thing, just straight through.
Oh.
No fragments of it was left at all. I mean, I'm sure it was dirty and things like that, but completely through.
Oh my God. I was reading this whole thing wrong. I thought it was like stuck in his head.
Nope.
Oh my God. So it was like a freaking just a clean hole right through.
Pretty much. And that's probably how he lived.
Oof. So what was his doctor doing? Just like sewing him up?
So Dr. Harlow had to, kind of like I was saying before, he had to like puzzle piece his skull back together as best as he could. But keep in mind that like that tamping rod would have been filthy. So he's probably trying to debride all of that shrapnel out of Phineas's head. It's more than just that. Like, it went through his cheek. So he's got damage to his teeth. His eye is damaged. He's got burns all over his arms and his hands.
Mm-hmm.
He had extensive damage, more than just to his brain.
10 days later, Phineas would develop an infection that Dr. Harlow didn't expect him to recover from. He had lost a significant amount of blood, his brain was swollen, and he was anemic. Phineas would spend the next 10 days from September 23rd to October 2nd, 1848, in a semi-comatose state. He also developed a fungal infection that had to be surgically removed. A local cabinet maker made a coffin in preparation, and his family picked out burial clothes for Phineas's expected death.
Dr. Harlow continued providing care to Phineas, and against all odds, he pulled through again. By October 11th, Phineas had regained some of his physical strength. Within a month, Phineas was strong enough to leave the house for a walk. He would remain under Dr. Harlow's care for the next 10 weeks. Phineas had been blinded in his left eye, broken a molar tooth, and he did suffer severe brain damage to his left frontal lobe. The exit point from the rod would leave a permanent raised bump on the top of his skull. Phineas also had a large crack in his skull that ran from his left eye up his forehead and to the exit point from the rod at the top.
Something that had significantly changed was Phineas's personality. According to his friends and family, Phineas had been even-tempered and had a great work ethic prior to the accident. Dr. Harlow had something different to say.
He is fitful, irreverent, indulging in times in the grossest profanity, which was not previously his custom.
People who had known Phineas before his accident said he was no longer Gage. He had a hard time handling money, but had a clear memory and no other physical impairments. Phineas hadn't been fond of animals before, but after the accident, he became a true animal lover and took care of all kinds of animals, particularly horses.
He also became attached to materialistic objects to the point of obsession. The tamping rod was kept with Phineas almost constantly for many years. In an experiment, Dr. Harlow offered Phineas $1,000 for some pebbles that Phineas had pulled from a stream. Phineas refused to sell the pebbles, no matter the cost.
Why did Dr. Harlow do this? Was it because Phineas was famous?
At this point, Phineas is not famous more than just the notoriety of wow, that guy survived. They don't understand what is going on with him. And so I think this was just an experiment hey, you've got those pebbles, I'll buy those off of you. How much money this would have been in the 1800s if someone offered you $1,000, that's not even $1,000 today. But if somebody offered me $1,000 for some pebbles in my pocket, heck yeah, they're yours. Give me that money, right? Because you have different decision-making skills than Phineas was capable of making.
So it was some sort of test,
right,
for Phineas to be okay, I got you.
I think it was just all about testing Phineas's judgment on things. This was their first look or glimpse into what damage to the front of your brain could do to you. What does this do to you? How would this affect you? They had no idea.
It's sad because Phineas was probably not aware of it either, right?
Right.
So it's sad.
Sometime between 1850 to 1854, a photograph was taken of Phineas holding the exact tamping rod from the accident. The photo shows Phineas somewhere between 27 and 31 years old, sitting with the iron bar in his left hand. We'll post the photo to our socials.
In January 1850, Professor of Surgery Henry Jacob Bigelow brought Phineas to Boston for a medical review at Harvard Medical School. During the review, a plaster head cast was created. The plaster cast remains today. It shows a large bump in the center front portion of his skull and malformation around his left eye as well.
How the brain worked was a mystery to doctors in the 1800s. Malcolm Macmillan from the Melbourne School of Psychological Sciences described why Phineas's case was so unique.
He was the first case where you could say fairly definitely that injury to the brain produced some kind of change in personality.
Phineas not only survived the accident, but was able to talk about it. The damage to just the frontal lobe confirmed that certain portions of the brain were associated with certain functions. Phineas provided the perfect test subject for the medical review. For a couple of years, his personality continued to change. He was rude, reckless, a heavy drinker, and unable to understand or care about consequences. Previously, Phineas had been a hard worker. Now he showed up for work late and would be fired for, quote, indiscipline. For a couple of years, Phineas could no longer hold a job consistently. He did get a job in New Hampshire as a carriage driver, which allowed him to spend time with the horses that he loved.
After a period of 2 or 3 years, Phineas began to regain some of his previous personality. He was able to get a job at the Barnum's American Museum, and then in 1852 moved to Chile to work as a stagecoach driver, again working with horses.
Phineas had sent the tamping iron to Harvard Medical School Museum, and in 1854 he requested that it be returned to him. During the years that Harvard Medical School Museum had the bar, an incorrect inscription had been added.
This is the bar that was shot through the head of Mr. Phineas P. Gage at Cavendish, Vermont, September 14, 1848. He fully recovered from the injury and deposited this bar in the museum of the Medical College of Harvard University.
Upon receiving the tamping iron back, it was discovered that Phineas's name was spelled incorrectly, and an incorrect date was listed. In 1859, Phineas's health began to fail, and he moved to San Francisco, California, where his mother and sister lived. He regained his health for a while and worked at a farm. Phineas's mother reported that he was anxious to get back to work during this time and started up at the farm again as soon as he was well enough.
Then in 1860, Phineas began to have epileptic seizures stemming from the brain damage. 12 years after the accident, Phineas died on May 21st, 1860, at 36 years old. Phineas was buried at San Francisco's Lone Mountain Cemetery. In 1867, with the permission of Phineas's mother, his body was exhumed. Just his skull was sent to Dr. Harlow in Massachusetts. How would you feel about that? Right? Just send your son's skull to a doctor. Leave the rest. Just his skull.
All in the name of science.
I would not like that at all.
I agree. I think it's kind of a strange request. It was very charitable of her to do.
Yeah.
Because we have learned quite a bit from it.
Yeah. It's like one of those, like, you know how people want to donate their bodies to science and stuff when they pass away? Like, that's a true, like, hero right there. Like, donating your body to science so that, like, we can make, you know, better discoveries and, yeah, I don't know, just testing or whatever they do with that. But that ain't me. that ain't me, honey. Nope. I will give you praise for doing it, but it will not be me.
Well, and it's interesting too that his body was exhumed in 1867 and we still have that skull on display today.
I know, I Googled it. It's pretty rad.
Yes, the hole in the top of his skull and that crack that runs his whole forehead that they would not have been able to see while he was alive. Imagine the headaches he had to have.
Mm-hmm.
Like his quality of life had to have been poor.
Yeah.
It's not really reported, but you would imagine that he would have had some serious, he's blind in one eye. He would have had burns on his hands and his arms. He lost a tooth, which is the smallest situation there, right? Like you lost a molar tooth, but that still sucks.
I know. Like he cracked a molar tooth out of everything.
Like that's the smallest potato there. But he literally had a crack running diagonal across his forehead and a hole at the top that had to hurt every day.
Yeah. And just the fact of knowing that like he couldn't hold his like original job. Do you know what happened to him? Like, weren't you here that day, Frank? Didn't you see the pole go through my skull? Give me a little slack here.
Yeah.
Seriously.
You're going to let me go after all that?
Exactly. There's so much, with this.
They should have just given him retirement right then and just paid him off. Like,
thank you for your service.
Right. We're so sorry this happened to you. Not happening. They just let him go.
Can you imagine like the training after it with like the new employees and stuff? Now make sure
yeah.
you don't want to do it this way because Phineas over here.
Like every new hire heard that story. Every single new hire.
They'll be like, it went through what now?
So many new hires just quit right there. They're like, actually, no. Just no.
They still are probably talking about it to this day with railways.
I mean, we are.
Yeah.
The following year, Dr. Harlow published an article on the medical case in the publications of the Massachusetts Medical Society. Today, you can see Phineas Gage's skull, plaster head cast, and the tamper at the Warren Museum Exhibition Gallery at the Countway Library of Medicine. We now know that the off-level bump that can be seen in that 1850 plaster cast shows the hole from the tamper and the cracked and lifted portion of Phineas's skull.
The story of Phineas Gage taught us that frontal lobe damage can cause changes to our personality and social interactions. Medical professionals previously had no idea that the frontal lobe was responsible for our personality traits. In the 1890s, doctors began experimenting with damaging the frontal lobes of patients suffering from mental health conditions. You may have guessed that this was the beginning of the first lobotomy that would be performed in 1935.
In the 1940s, neurologist Stanley Cobb diagrammed Phineas's skull to track the exact path of the tamping iron. Then, in the 1980s, scientists repeated the experiment, this time using CT scans. In 1994, scientists used neuroimaging to reconstruct Phineas's skull and the exact impact location. Based on this study, researchers believe that his left and right prefrontal cortices were damaged. Just like Dr. Harlow stated in his study of Phineas's behavior, this would have resulted in issues with decision-making and rational decisions. In 1998, on the 150th anniversary, a memorial plaque was placed at the location of the accident. The plaque has a short summary of the events and Phineas's life. It also displays the example of the plaster cast and a discussion about the breakthrough this would be in neuroscience.
A study in 2004 used 3D computer reconstruction to investigate the injury. This study found that Phineas only had damage to his left frontal lobe. The most recent study occurred in 2012, and it speculates that 11% of the white matter in Phineas's frontal lobe and 4% of his cerebral cortex would have been damaged by the tamping iron.
Some sources report that Phineas's personality began to revert back to his original personality sometime around the 4-year mark after the accident. But no one is alive today to provide confirmation if this was true. It is important to note that he was able to work as a driver, managing up to 6 horses at once and transporting passengers in Chile. Not only did he do the job, he kept the job for 7 years. A job that would have required him to focus, make quick decisions, and operate a vehicle, which are all frontal lobe functions.
Other stories state that Phineas was a drunkard and scam artist during the same time period. Again, we lack support on what Phineas's personality was like 4 to 12 years after his accident. He may have been a scam artist or circus performer like some sources say, or he may have had a minor job in Chile that wasn't quite stagecoach, but more horse groomer. We know that he worked at Barnum's American Museum, but sometimes he is listed as a circus attraction and others he works in the museum itself.
The more recent research suggests that Phineas's brain likely went through a process called cortical remapping. This means that the gray and white matter in his brain worked together to reroute the damage. This process could have taken years to reorganize and reroute to compensate for the damage. There are plenty of stories on each side. Was he one step away from a criminal? Or have the stories been exaggerated and he worked but had lesser jobs? Did Phineas recover and live a mostly normal life? We'll leave that up to you to decide.
The life of Phineas Gage was miraculous, and he played an important role in the understanding of how the human brain works. His survival and different personality after the accident led to multiple studies on how the brain, specifically the frontal lobe, works in connection with our personalities.
We would love for you to become part of the Corrupt crew. You can find us on Patreon with multiple tiers and PayPal. This will score you our appreciation and will announce your name in a future episode. Both links are in the episode notes. Case suggestions and feedback can be emailed to us at corruptpod@gmail.com.
The sources for this episode would be listed in the episode notes. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Threads. Don't forget to subscribe to catch our new Corrupt content. Please also leave us a review wherever you're listening to this episode. Bye!
Bye!